When Los Angeles guarantees Quentin Johnston $18 million for 2027, that is not some tiny contract note you just scroll past. That is a statement from inside the building. That is this front office saying it believes in talent, it believes in pressure, and it believes this roster still has another level coming. And while plenty of people keep talking about the Chargers like they are waiting for some miracle to save them, Joe Hortiz is out here working the margins. He is looking for a cheap corner. He is looking for another tight end weapon for Justin Herbert. And now he is even in a quiet minicamp tug-of-war with Kansas City over a depth piece. So subscribe right now, because today we are going behind the scenes, inside the market, and around a Chargers team that looks absolutely done asking for permission. Now let's get into the decision that is going to divide a lot of fans, because the Chargers picked up Quentin Johnston's fifth-year option and guaranteed him $18 million for 2027. And I am going to say this straight. Yes, that is a serious bet. Nobody should pretend otherwise. But it is also the franchise looking at a former first-round wide receiver and saying, without waiting for the national media to approve it, we still believe in our guy. Johnston has not been perfect. We all watched the highs and lows. We all heard the criticism. But pretending he has done nothing is just lazy. He led the team in touchdowns over the last 2 seasons, put up 735 receiving yards in 14 games last year, and since entering the league, he has 144 catches, 1,877 yards, and 18 touchdowns. That changes the way this conversation has to be handled. It is one thing to ask if Johnston has become the superstar people expected when he was drafted in 2023. That is fair. But it is a totally different thing to act like he has not been finding the end zone while this offense has dealt with changes, injuries, coaching adjustments, and now a whole new identity with Mike McDaniel. This fifth-year option is not a charity move. It is not a sympathy award. It is asset control. It is the Chargers making sure a young, physical, still developing player does not get anywhere near the open market before Los Angeles gets a real answer on what his ceiling can be in this offense. And here is the part that needs more edge in this conversation. The wide receiver room is not comfortable anymore. It is loaded with pressure. Ladd McConkey is already a trust piece. Trey Harris and Keandre Lambert-Smith bring legitimate competition. Johnston is not being handed anything. He is being challenged. And maybe that is exactly what he needs. Because if McDaniel can use his size, his red zone ability, and that route development with Herbert getting the ball out on time, the Chargers did not just buy one more season. They bought another chance to turn all that old criticism into a brand new problem for defenses. And after that major offensive decision, the other side of the ball is screaming about one very specific need. The draft answered a lot of questions for the Chargers. Akeem Mesidor came in to give the pass rush immediate power next to Khalil Mack and Tuli Tuipolotu. Jake Slaughter steps into a real fight for a spot on the interior offensive line. Brennan Thompson brings speed. Nick Barrett, Genesis Smith, Travis Burke, Logan Taylor, and Alex Harkey all add depth where the roster needed more bodies. But there is still one position where the warning light is blinking red: cornerback. Benjamin St-Juste leaving for the Green Bay Packers does not wreck the secondary, but it does take away a rotation piece. And that is why Adoree Jackson becomes such an interesting name. Not because he is some flashy, perfect answer. Not because he walks in and fixes everything, but because he is exactly the type of low-cost bet Hortiz can try to turn into value. If anyone tells me Jackson should come in as the locked-in starting corner, I am shutting that down right away. That is not the point. His season in Philadelphia was rough, with a 54.1 coverage grade from Pro Football Focus and 12 missed tackles. That is scary if you are shopping for a savior. But the Chargers are not shopping for a savior. They need someone who can replace a defender who played 37% of the defensive snaps across the 16 games he was active. That is where the math starts to make sense. SpotTrack projects Jackson's next deal at around $1.8 million per year. That is a trial price. That is not a marriage. And Los Angeles has already shown it believes in its defensive environment. St-Juste came off a rough year in Washington, signed a cheap deal, improved in coverage and tackling, then left for a 2-year, $10 million deal with Green Bay, while still helping the Chargers' compensatory pick logic. That is the roster-building game a lot of people never talk about. It is not just signing a recognizable name. It is buying a discounted player, putting him in the right role, cleaning up the details, and if the market rewards him later, letting him walk without panicking. With Dante Jackson, Tarheeb Still, and Cam Hart already in the mix, Adoree would not have to carry the whole room. He would need to compete. He would need to cover injuries. He would need to survive in specific packages and prove he still has enough athletic juice to avoid becoming the guy offenses automatically attack. To me, this is simple. If the price stays low and the role stays honest, that is exactly the kind of move that helps keep a defense breathing in December. And if the defense needs a low-cost corner, the offense has a bigger, louder question to answer. Why not put David Njoku on the table? I know how some fans are going to react. The tight end room already has a path, right? Adoree Jackson looks ready to grow. Charlie Kolar arrived with that useful, versatile profile, the kind of player Mike McDaniel can use without needing a long explanation. But after that, the depth starts getting thin. And if this team wants to fight in January, it cannot build everything around a perfect scenario in April. Njoku is 29 years old. He is coming off a stretch in Cleveland where he lost some ground and dealt with injuries, missing 11 games over the last 2 seasons. That hurts his market. That changes the price. That takes away the idea of some massive signing and turns the name into something far more interesting for Joe Hortiz, a talented veteran, maybe without the leverage to demand a full-time role, stepping into a rotation with an elite quarterback and an offensive coordinator who knows how to create space. And before anybody tries to act like Njoku has nothing left, slow down. Even in 12 games with only 33 catches, he scored 4 touchdowns and generated 166 yards after the catch, according to Pro Football Focus. That is size. That is short area burst. That is contact balance. That is real yards after the catch. The point here is not to block Gadsden. It is to protect Gadsden. It is making sure the young tight end does not have to be everything right away. Vertical target, red zone threat, movement piece, blocker, safety valve, and third down answer all at once. Njoku could take some of that weight off him, bring former first-round experience, and give Herbert another target who does not go down the second a defender touches him. In an offense with Lad McConkey, Quentin Johnston, Trey Harris, Keandre Lambert-Smith, and Brennan Thompson stretching the field, a tight end who can threaten after the catch puts linebackers in a brutal spot. And I want to hear from the Chargers community on this one. Would you rather see Los Angeles go after Njoku now while the market is colder, or would you rather save the space and let Gadsden take on as much volume as he can handle? Because when I look at this possibility, I see it pretty clearly. If the price is rotational, the Chargers would not be buying the past. They would be buying a physical problem for defenses inside an offense that finally looks like it wants to play angry. Now, the fourth story looks smaller on paper, but it has that extra Chargers-Chiefs flavor that always makes things a little more interesting. Tulane tight end Johnny Pascuzzi received a rookie minicamp invite from Los Angeles and also from Kansas City. And yes, we are talking about a tryout, not a signing. We are talking about a player who did not join the first UDFA wave, who did not put up huge college production, finishing last season with 12 catches, 158 yards, and 1 touchdown after spending time at Iowa before transferring to Tulane. But when both teams in this rivalry are looking at the same name, even at the bottom of the board, I pay attention. Pascuzzi has ties to the Kansas City area, played high school there, and participated in the Chiefs' local pro day in early April. So Kansas City's interest makes sense. The more interesting part is the Chargers side of it. Why does Los Angeles want to get this player in the building? Maybe it is the frame. Maybe it is the interview. Maybe there is a hidden trait. Maybe the scouting staff saw something that never really showed up in the box score. And honestly, that is how a lot of real roster battles begin. Far away from national TV, far away from the headlines, with one invite that looks small until a player earns a camp spot and starts making noise. There is one more provocative detail here. The Chiefs minicamp happens 1 week before the Chargers minicamp, so Pascuzzi could go through Kansas City first. If the Chiefs really like him, they could try to sign him and keep Los Angeles from ever getting that in-person look. Is that going to decide the AFC West? Of course not. But rivalries also live in these tiny margin moves. Who identifies the body first? Who makes the right call? Who finds usefulness where the other team only saw curiosity? For the Chargers, Pascuzzi fits into the bigger picture. They are still searching for tight end competition. We already talked about Njoku as a possible veteran piece, Gadsden as an important development player, and Kolar as a functional fit. Pascuzzi would be in a completely different tier. Camp body, practice squad candidate, long shot opportunity. But I am not dismissing that. Because when Harbaugh builds a roster, he is not just choosing pretty starters for a team photo. He is creating friction at the bottom of the roster. And if Kansas City is poking around too, even better. Los Angeles has to stay aggressive in the details. And in the end, what stands out about these 4 stories is the same message. The Chargers are not sitting around waiting for the roster to fix itself. They backed Quentin Johnston. They could still hunt for a cheap corner like Adoree Jackson. They could turn David Njoku into a physical weapon for Herbert if the price falls into the right range. And even at rookie minicamp, they are going head-to-head with Kansas City over depth evaluation. That is daily roster building. That is not empty headline chasing. That is Hortiz trying to win with stars, contracts, details, and margins. So if you want to track every Chargers move with real heat and no lazy narratives, subscribe to the channel and stay right here.